podcast where we're going to touch upon all the different career opportunities that are available to you after your studies while helping you to increase your knowledge by talking to different professionals from different industries. I'm your host, David Bokanga, and today I have a special guest, Dr. Gyllian Phillips. How you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks.
Yeah. It's actually, I want to share that story, like how we met.
Yeah.
I remember me and my friend Danny were selling tickets and we saw your room, like I think a potluck was going on.
Yeah.
And we just knocked on the door and you were so like welcoming and you just invite us in and we had the chance to share the potluck with your students and talk in that class too. And it was a bit related with celebrate the culture.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate how welcoming it was from you.
Oh, that's great. Well, that was so funny because it just seemed like something led you guys to my room, right? Because we were just having, because it was Caribbean literature, right? And we spent the semester talking about like music and all kind, and then you guys were selling the tickets for the Celebrate the Culture. And it was just like, and we happen to have lunch, right? We don't normally have lunch in that class. So
that was great. And Caribbean food too. So,
yeah, exactly.
That was really nice. I wanted to ask you, how did you get into teaching?
It's a kind of roundabout route. So I started off, I wasn't a very good high school student at all. And I went to college to study music. And then I ended up going to university. And then I found like way into my studies that I actually preferred being in English. Yeah. And so then I went and I kind of finished my undergrad and did graduate school. But, I never really expected necessarily that I would get a job as a university teacher. I just really liked what I was doing, what I was studying, and then somehow ended up here. And this ended up being a perfect place for me because at Nipissing, it's really about being in the classroom with the students, right? And really developing that relationship. So, yeah.
I really like how in life, nothing is ever like really guaranteed.
Exactly.
You can have your own plans like in your head, oh, I want to do this and that, but there's so many things and so many circumstances that are going to make you re-question what you really want to do and what are like your qualities and where you're going to thrive the most.
Yeah, exactly. No, I really like that you have that awareness because I know so many students come in their first year and they're like, no, I had to pick a career direction. And so I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to be a this, I'm going to be a that. And I'm like, you're 18 and life is going to take you in so many directions that you have no idea. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like even me being here at Nipissing, being from Montreal, it's so different, but it helped me grow so much, just changing that environment, being in a different culture and going to school in a whole different language. Like I never been to school like in English before.
Wow.
So that was really great. And after your undergrad, you decided to pursue graduate studies. What made you do like that jump?
Well, so a bunch of things, and some of them are really practical. One is that I just decided to take a year off after my undergrad, and it was, I have to say this, it was in 1990, and there was a recession going on. It was hard to find a job, and so I was really looking for work, and I was doing various things, and one of the things I did was I was a supply teacher at high school, and I was like, okay, I like teaching, but not high school. So I thought, well, why not go back to university and try to do a PhD?
Discipline that you have to do with like,
yeah. No, it was nuts. I spent all my time getting people to sit down in their chair instead of teaching them stuff, like actual knowledge. So yeah, it was tough. And I have so much respect for teachers in public school. Like it is a hard job. They work so hard. So
especially like teenagers, that's the moment where you change and there's whole different like personality in the classrooms.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you did your PhD. That's what you wanted to do. Can you talk a bit? I've seen that you specialize in British modernism and post-colonial literature. Can you talk a bit on that specialization and why you decided to go?
Yeah. Well, again, it's a kind of you start off one path and you go down a different path. But a lot of where I started was with British writing by British writers in the early 20th century. So like Virginia Woolf and T.S. Eliot and James Joyce and people like that. And then, but I was also really interested in the idea of that English literature, kind of it's like technically it's in England, but then English as a language spread across the world, right? Because of colonialism, just because of colonialism. And so then I started thinking, well, what are the effects of that spread and what happens to that language when it goes into a different place? And at the same, I think I told you a little bit about my story is, at the same time that I was kind of making the decision to go to university, I also met the man who became my husband, who's been my husband for 30 years. And he was from Jamaica. He's from the Caribbean originally. Like he's been in Canada since 1983. So very Canadian, but meeting him opened my eyes to how there are just so many different, like really different, really unique cultures but that are part of that kind of English language tradition, but are not English in any way, right? And so I kind of had both sides of that literary tradition, I guess. Yeah,
it's crazy because like England, like they colonized so many countries, even like in Africa, you have like a lot of countries that speak English till this day. But it's amazing to see like there's still some dialect that they speak like in different countries, and just to see how everything changed and like the history and learning about that. Like there's a lot of things, some good insight that you can get out of this. Okay, so you said your husband is from Jamaica. Do you have any children?
Yeah. So he, when we first got together, he already had a child from different family. And so we raised Dwayne, and then we had 2 more kids as well while we were in North Bay. So yeah, I actually now have grandchildren because Dwayne is like he's almost 40, and so so like a kind of multi-generational family.
Congratulations on
Thanks.
that.
Yeah.
But can you touch a bit on how it was to raise a biracial kid or just black kids? How was it for you? Was it like a change? And
yeah, it's been really interesting. And I think, again, like I grew up, my heritage is entirely European, German, Irish, whatever. I grew up mostly in a small town in BC. And so the interior BC, very white. And so, this was a really new thing for me, getting together with Dave and then having a family, and then moving to North Bay with the family was, in like, honestly, in a lot of ways, it was really, really challenging. And when we moved here with Dwayne, he was a teenager and he went into high school, and he was the only Black kid in Chippewa, like at the time, right? Really. And it was so hard for him. Like I have to just be really honest with you here. I'm not always, I don't always say this stuff about North Bay, but he encountered a ton of like really overt racism, and it was tough, right? It was really hard, but he found, and we had a hard time with that as parents, but he also played football. And so he found his way into, friendship groups and acceptance and feeling good about himself through sport. And so I saw that, as being really positive. And my husband was an athlete as well, and went to university on athletic scholarship and all that kind of stuff. And then I found when we had our kids, like, so Dwayne was 18 when my daughter was born. So they're like a whole generation later. And it has been different for them for sure. And I find that has changed in North Bay over time. But it's, we used to go, when the kids were little, we used to go down to Toronto for the weekend or something like that. You would drive that. And I just remember driving into Toronto and just feeling this sense of relief and it was just because, it's so multicultural, right? Like just everyone around, you didn't always feel a little bit on edge. Whereas it just made me realize in North Bay, we always felt just a little bit on edge. So yeah, I think it really depends on where you are and how accepting people are. And
that's why even since I came here to Nipissing, I really try to get myself involved in the community.
Yeah.
Like this year, I've been part of New Base, and we did a lot of outreach with the high school here. So we went and just did some workshop with the students just to help them understand some little things like discrimination, some stuff that maybe they were not educated about this. So I think by helping them understand those issues at a younger age, it's a lot better. Like it helps that conversation just to include diversity and just be open to a lot of people. And I've seen some good changes. I've been here. Like I know there's still some places like there's always room for improvement, but a lot of great things since I've been here.
Yeah, that's so great, and I think it's so important to do that through relationship building. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like people can get kind of like education knowledge thrown at them, but if they don't meet people and talk to people and share experiences and all that, it just makes a big difference. So can I ask you, like from your experience as a student, what are some things that would be helpful for me as a professor to know about, like how to make my classroom feel like a welcoming and inclusive place?
But I think I wanted to touch on that. Yeah, just the way you teach to others and just to have that creativity and just you have like good energy, you know how to like make students laugh and stuff like that. I think when teachers are able, that's something here at Nipissing I think we have. When teachers are able to have that relationship with students, it makes students more comfortable to talk to them. And I've seen like some other students that told me like they actually had some one-on-one conversation with the prof and they like open up to their prof about like some problems that they had outside of the school, and the prof really like helped that student like to get the right help, or like just because at the end of the day, I think when you're older, when you've been through a lot of things in life, sometimes you have a certain knowledge that younger people might not have. I think it's really like creating that conversation, and I think that's a way to really help what's going on.
That's great. Yeah. And I agree. I think we have a real opportunity for that at Nipissing specifically because it's smaller.
It's smaller. Yeah, I like it. Touching on that, I've been in your class and you said that you have a lot of creativity in terms of how you assign the assignment that you want the evaluation that you want your students to do. Can you touch on a bit on what is it so important to you to include creativity while you're teaching?
Well, I mean, I think there's a bunch of reasons. One is that it engages interest, right? I mean, students get to the end of like right now, it's the end of semester, it's April, and everyone has to write 5 essays and do 5 exams. And it just feels like the same thing over and over and over again, right? So it's finding ways to create that variety so that you really get engaged in the task and what you're doing. But also for the class that you happen to come to, that class, I was really trying to find assignments that reflect a different mode of, a different mode of being, a different mode of knowledge. So if I was teaching a course on, Virginia Woolf or Shakespeare or something like that, I might approach it in a more traditional literary way. But teaching about the Caribbean and different Caribbean cultures and different Caribbean modes of expression, like then you have to talk about music and you have to talk about dub poetry and you have to talk about, the way people live their lives and dance and eat and, like it's just so for example, one of my creative assignments was that the students had to come up with a podcast, or not a podcast, a playlist. Yeah, playlist. And so it was just them going and finding songs from, kind of any Caribbean origin, from the diaspora, right? And just explaining what the connections were. And it just got them, it's like music, it's fun. Who doesn't like to do, listen to a bunch of music, but then also, make those knowledge connections that are not just from a book, right?
And I think that is really nice because at first you said that you wanted to study into music, right?
Yes, that's right. That was
So
my first
that
thing.
kind
Yeah.
of connects everything
Yeah.
together. And also, like, it's good to keep things like traditional, but at the same time, there's a whole new generation of
Yeah.
students that are coming in. So
Yeah.
doing different tasks and different assignment is a way, like you said, to keep things interesting and just to keep them motivated too.
Yeah.
And just to keep them more involved in everything that you're doing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Can you discuss if you have any particular challenges or obstacle that you face while teaching, and how did you overcome them?
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, I've been teaching for a long time, so there have been a lot of different things that have come up over the years. I think, I think from a university perspective, one of the things that I've found challenging to work with has been there's a tension between seeing university as pathway to employment and seeing university as a pathway to like education to be a citizen, to be a person in the world, like living your life and as fully as you can. And I think trying to follow both of those paths is a challenge in the classroom, because I want all of my students to get a job and pay their rent, right? Like that's for sure too. But I also want them to recognize that, if they're reading poetry or they're reading novels, they're also reading about their life and their future, and, becoming resilient people and good communicators and sensitive and aware, so that's been challenging. And then I do find like, over the years, the move to phones, like a lot of screen, with social media and phones and laptops and all that kind of stuff, that has made it, has really shortened everyone's attention span, right? Wow. So that makes it a real challenge too. So I'm like, it's not always popular, but I really like to have people put away their phones and put away their laptops and just like engage with each other face to face. So that's a challenge. But then there have been good sides to that too. Like students come into my classroom being like way more aware of what's going on in the world than they used to be. Like really, it's amazing. So I don't know.
Like the information is way more accessible.
Yeah.
But I think at the same time, we like that focus. Like we can't stay in class for like 2 hours and just listen to someone.
Yeah.
We should be like able to do that, because I feel when you put that distraction aside, that's when you're able to gain more information than if you had your phone and looking at it every time.
Yeah, I think that's true. But I think there's also responsibility on us, the people doing the talking, to keep people engaged, right? So I do think there's a problem with someone who just stands up and reads their note. Yeah, exactly. So like it's like it goes both ways. Yeah.
I've seen that you've contributed to a lot of publication, including articles and books. Can you tell me a bit about that process, and was it always a goal of yours to publish books and articles?
Yeah, well, it's definitely a part of the job as a university, as an academic and a university professor, is you write a lot of essays. So
Especially doing a PhD.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's I think probably a lot of students will feel this way too. It's a love-hate relationship. Like it's hard to write an essay. It's hard to do all that research. Then you're proud of yourself. And I love the creative part. Like I love the idea part. I get really excited about ideas. And I really enjoy being able to follow my curiosity, through a topic. And so if you do look at my various publications, like they're all over the place, because I get an idea and I'm like, oh, I want to find out about that. Right. And then I do that.
As I was reading the title, I can't remember your name. I think it was Virginia something. But I just think it's interesting how you find two writers that are women too.
Yeah.
It's really like, it's different. Like, I don't know. I liked it. That's something that I like.
Yeah.
It was two women.
Yeah. No. And that was kind of where I started, was like with women writers and early British, kind of early 20th century. But then I also, like, I was just, I wrote this whole article on like the first zombie movie, 1930s white zombie. And because it came from, because no one knew at the time really very much that zombies come from Haiti, right? Like, and they're from, and there's this whole tradition, like back through the history of slavery and back through to West Africa. And it's like this image of kind of resistance against slavery and against colonialism and neocolonialism. But when I was like doing that research, most people, when they thought of zombies, they thought of like Night of the Living Dead or something like that. You know what I mean? So there's that whole dimension that's kind of lost. And so scholars get a chance to find that history and pull it back into people's awareness. So it's exciting.
Hard to find like all those sources and
yeah. It is.
I wouldn't know where to start.
Yeah.
The zombie thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is. It's really hard. And actually, to be honest with you, that research part is not my it's not my strongest. It's not my big strength. So the thing that I like is ideas and analyzing texts and stuff. So I really sympathize with students who are not fans of the research essay because it's hard. And I feel like I have good advice to give too, because it doesn't come easily to me. So
that's good. At least, some students can relate.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to touch about too, when you teach a class, what is something that you want to get out of your students?
That's a great question. I mean, I do want them to master the material, and I try to bring forward material that I think is worth taking forward in their lives, So like when I'm teaching that Caribbean literature class, I'm like, what do I want? I want students to have an understanding of, like how racialization works, right? And how discrimination works and how systemic discrimination works, and just understand some of those concepts because those are so important for people in their lives. But then also I want them to, like one of my students said, it was funny because we were going over the test and some of them did not do great on the the sort of geography questions and the dates question, when was Jamaica independent? Those kinds of things are like, and I said, well, why do you think it's important to know these things? And one of my students was like, well, actually colonialism is a really hard history and we need to honor that past by understanding it. And I was like, that's a really nice way of putting it. I really like that way of putting it. So I think that's important too, right? But then I also want them to just practice their skills of communicating, practice their skills of analyzing, practice, because it's practice. It's not perfection, right?
And something, like you said, working on those communication skills, something that I feel like I really improved this year, and a lot of students should really do that, is participate in class.
Yeah.
At first, I remember my first year, I was shy. I wouldn't talk at all. And then I just got myself like more comfortable. I'm like, even if I do mistakes, like I pay tuition, like I'm here for something.
Yeah.
So might as well use like all the resources that I have. And by speaking, I just get more comfortable, and that's how you learn. Because sometimes you ask a question and a lot of people have the same question as you, but
exactly
they're shy to ask you.
Exactly. And yeah.
There's some teachers that are really good to make that environment comfortable and safe, like saying that all questions are not like dumb questions.
Exactly. Yeah. Really, and do you find you learn more when you talk?
Because you are like in the class. You're not just listening. You're participating in that class, so your brain is working better. I think that's how I feel.
I totally agree with you, and I think this is something I hope that we learned during COVID when we were all online. And I think people adopted this kind of like, well, I'll just sit back and watch because it's so awkward to talk online. And now that we're back more in the classroom, I think people recognize that, oh yeah, actually this is the talking and the dialogue is part of the learning. Yeah.
Sure. When you were in university, did you always like knew you were gonna end up here?
No, not a chance. No way. It's so weird. Every time, I kind of think, if you had told me, in first year that this is where I would be in 2023, I would have been like, are you kidding me? No way. Yeah, no, I was going to be a musician. That was my plan. Yeah.
But you went to UBC. Are you from BC?
And I'm from BC, so I didn't think I would live in Ontario. I grew up in BC. Yeah, in the Kootenays. Yeah, in the West Kootenays, and then I went to UBC. Yeah.
That's cool. Like you travel all over the country.
Yeah.
Like from west to east.
Yeah.
Okay. If you could go back and talk to your younger self, what are some advice that you would give to yourself?
Uh yeah, I mean, I would probably go in a couple of directions. One is I would encourage myself not to procrastinate
Hmm.
because I was an early procrastinator on the homework, right? So yeah, just settle down and get her done. But on the other hand, I would also encourage my younger self not to overthink things too much and to be less worried about what other people think than about what I think about what I'm doing, right? Like, am I fully engaged in what I'm doing? Do I think this is a great idea? And if I do, like, don't second guess it, just
Hmm.
go for it. Yeah.
And you talk about overthinking. I think that's really a problem that we have right now, especially with social media. It's so easy to see like other people's life, but it's not really their life. It's just what they post on social media.
Yes.
And I think a lot of students are struggling with like overthinking, and that can lead like to like mental health issues, depression, because you're just thinking in your head and you don't have what you want right away. That leads me to that question. What do you do like outside of work? Do you have like any hobbies or anything that keeps you like balanced and like the self-care?
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. And one of the things that I really loved about coming to North Bay and being at Nipissing, even though I came here for the job, I
Yeah.
didn't intentionally move here for the, but is the out of doors.
Mhm.
So I love hiking, I love canoeing, I love skiing, I love being outside, right? So that camping, we do a ton of camping. So that has been so important to me, kind of being on the land here.
Yeah.
And that's actually been part of my interest in post-colonial or decolonial literature, and thinking about that too is just realizing that this is not my land. This is
Yeah.
somebody else's land that I am on and enjoying. And like, maybe it's important for me to bring that into my classroom as well. So that's really important. But I also, I started as a musician, and I'm also coming back to kind of playing music
Oh, yeah.
for fun. So I'm in the Eddie band,
Yeah.
on campus with Mary Thornton, and I'm in the 22 wing band. And
Yeah.
so yeah, all those things, having those things, well, because you're an athlete too,
Mhm.
right? Like, having those things they're so good, because you need to have something where you can just stop thinking about the stuff that you get stressed about, right?
Yeah.
And just do something, right?
Yeah. For me, like you said, I'm an athlete. Like basketball has been a huge part of it. But I also like this campus, like Nipissing is actually nice. Like you said, the outdoors, like there's trails like not really from far from here, so it's really walkable distance. Maybe in the winter time it's a bit tougher, but some people like it. So yeah.
Oh yeah, you can get snowshoes.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. What are three most important skills or talent that people should have if they want to be where you're at right now, like be a teacher and everything?
Right. Oh, that's tough. Well, there's the things that have helped me, I think, have been number one, curiosity and excitement about ideas.
Mhm.
Like, I think if you're going to be a teacher, you have to really believe in what you're teaching, right? So you have to always be learning and always be curious and always be interested. Um, and and that's also a great thing to have as a student too, right? To get yourself through. So I think that's really important. I think another one is, like you were saying, life is not like, you can make all the plans you want to, but life is always going to go a different direction than you expect. And so being adaptable is so important, like in terms of a life plan, but even in terms of a day. Like, you walk into a classroom, your students, they've all been up the night before. You don't know where their state of mind is, or your challenging student is having a really hard time at home, and they make life in the classroom really difficult, but there's reasons for that, right? So being ready to, like, move and change when life doesn't go how you plan, is really important. And I think, so one of the things I say to my students, especially in that Caribbean class, but in all my classes too, is that a classroom is a community of care, and making your classroom feel like a community, like where people are comfortable, but comfortable enough to be challenged and to challenge other people, right? So it's not just like we're all holding hands, but we're ready, but we're looking after each other. We have each other's backs. I just think that makes it a totally different experience for teaching and for the student, and then like for people going out into the world, because if everyone goes out into the world and thinks this group is my community, right? Then you're looking after each other.
Yeah, it teaches like respect, also like respect all your colleagues. Everyone is around you. Yeah, that is important. And just how you say like teaching, there's so many skills that come with it. Like being a teacher, there's so many stuff. Like a teacher can change a student's life. Like you have to be able to read the room and be able to help the student learn and all that stuff. And I think students really remember their good teacher all their life.
They do.
Like I have like teachers that I had when I was in 7th grade, and I still remember to this day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A teacher can have a profound and can have an influence that they will never know that they had.
That's the thing, because you have so many like kids that come in every year, and maybe 10 years from now, you have no idea where they are.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
I just want to finish this interview with some quick hitters, so I'm gonna just ask you a couple of questions.
Okay.
You just answer. Okay. What's your favorite season of the year?
It's such a toss-up between summer and winter, but I have to go with summer. Okay.
If you could go anywhere in the world right now, one destination, where would it be?
Okay, a place that I've always wanted to go, but because I do work on the writing from this place, but I've never been, is South Africa. I'd really love to go to South Africa.
I would love to. I've never been.
Yeah.
If you can name me your best movie.
That's a hard one. Okay, one that I saw not that long ago, which I really loved, was The Swimmers. The Swimmers, yeah. So it's about two women. It's based on a true story about two women who were refugees from Syria, but also Olympic level swimmers. And so I don't even want to give away the story, but it's a sports movie, but it's also an amazing movie about refugees and about the migration experience of the refugees. So highly recommended. It's on Netflix. It's really, really good. Yeah.
I'll add it on my list for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. If you could name me 2 books that changed your life, everyone should read.
Yeah, the 2 books that changed my life, or everyone should read. Well, let's see. One that has been really influential for me. Oh my God, it's really hard to ask an English teacher to pick 2 books because there's so many. But one that I come back to a lot is Braiding Sweetgrass. This is a fairly recent one that I read, Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Absolutely beautiful book. It's a nonfiction book, but it really brings together like kind of ecology and art, poetry, and Indigenous, like Anishinaabe culture, and it's just a beautiful book. And then one from like my distant past. Well, I'd have to go with my girl Virginia Woolf, and I think my favorite book of hers. Oh no, that's a hard one too. But I would have to say. To the Lighthouse is a really beautiful book that I think everyone should read, but it's not an easy read.
Yeah, and that made me think. I almost forgot to ask you, who are the people that you look up to the most, and why?
Oh boy, also a tough question. Well, my family, both my parents, I have to say they were amazing people. My dad's passed away. My mom is still alive and kicking and amazing. And they're both really my role models. They're just super intelligent, warm, caring people. People that I admire. I mean, yeah, there's so many. I read... this is going to be kind of cheesy, but here it is. Anyway, I read, Nelson Mandela's memoir and like, there are just some people in the world that you can't believe they're human. And I would say that he's one of those people that you're just like, wow. Yeah.
When you face like tribulation like that and
Yeah.
staying in jail for so long,
Yeah.
just fighting for like what you think is right.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. So, yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Well, thank you for doing this podcast with me.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me.
I think a lot of people can get a lot of good insight out of this.
Nice.
So I'm excited for y'all to watch it. So this episode of Your Brains Need Fuel is going to be available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcast from. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Thank you.